The galaxy was burning. World after world fell into silence, their skies filled with fire, their oceans turned to smoke. Armies that once stood proud were now broken into pieces. Fleets that had once guarded the stars were scattered like dust. The enemy was endless. They came without mercy, without pause. Some called them the swarm. Others called them the machines. To the survivors, it no longer mattered. They were death, and they were everywhere. For decades, the great civilizations of the galaxy fought to survive. The proud reptilian warriors of the Drath, once feared by all, had lost half their empire in only 2 years. The noble Sheri, masters of technology, saw their shining cities swallowed by fire. Even the mighty Vexor, with their vast fleets, could not hold the line. Hope was dying. Councils met in secret chambers, speaking in whispers. Every meeting ended with the same words, "We cannot win." Refugees filled the stars. Entire species moved from one planet to the next, running, always running, but never safe. The enemy pushed forward. They never stopped. They never slept. They never gave mercy. And so the war became hopeless. Among the broken armies, fear spread like a disease. Soldiers no longer believed in victory. Commanders spoke of sacrifice, not triumph. Civilians began to accept the unthinkable, that perhaps their age was ending, and the galaxy would belong to the swarm. But in the darkest nights, in ruined cities and shattered fleets, a different whisper began to spread. It was quiet at first, spoken with doubt and fear, but it grew with every defeat. Call the humans. At first, no one dared to say it in public. Humans were strangers in the galaxy, a young species, small in number, and distant from the great centers of power. They were not counted among the mighty empires. Many saw them as reckless, unpredictable, even dangerous. But they were also remembered for something else. The Drath recalled a battle where human mercenaries fought until every weapon broke, and then fought with their bare hands. The Sheri remembered how humans refused to surrender even when outnumbered 100 to 1. The Vexor remembered a human fleet that destroyed 3 times its number in a single day, at the cost of nearly all their own. Humans were stubborn. Humans were fierce. Humans were different. The whispers grew louder. On ruined colonies, survivors asked why the humans had not yet come. In refugee camps, children told stories that the humans would one day arrive with fire in their eyes and courage in their hearts. Even some commanders, broken and desperate, admitted in private, "If anyone can stand against the enemy, it is them." But calling the humans was not simple. It meant admitting the war was lost. It meant surrendering pride, bowing to a younger race, and trusting them with the survival of the galaxy. And still, the whispers spread. In one shattered council chamber, deep beneath a ruined capital, the leaders of 3 great species met in silence. The Drath general, his scales scarred and broken, spoke first. "Our armies are gone. Our fleets are dust. The swarm will take this sector within months. We cannot hold." The Sheri scientist, her voice shaking, whispered, "There is one choice left." The Vexor commander slammed his fist against the table. "No. Not them. Not humans. They are wild, uncontrollable. They fight like beasts. They will burn the galaxy as quickly as they save it." The room fell into silence. But the truth could not be hidden. Every day, every hour, more worlds died. The galaxy was running out of time. Finally, the Drath general leaned forward. His eyes were filled with exhaustion, but also with something else, a desperate hope. "We have no choice. Call them." And so the decision was made. Messengers were sent into the dark, carrying signals across the stars, searching for the humans. It would take time. It would take courage. But the galaxy's last hope had been set into motion. The war was still hopeless. Armies were still broken. The enemy was still advancing. But for the first time in many years, there was a spark. A spark that whispered of change. The galaxy held its breath. Would the humans come? Would they fight? Or would they refuse, leaving the galaxy to die? No one knew. But one truth remained clear. If the humans answered the call, the war would never be the same again. The signals spread across the stars like faint cries in the dark. They carried only one message, repeated again and again. "Humans, we need you. The war is lost. Come." Many did not believe the humans would answer. Why would they? The humans had no empire in this war, no vast fleet, no colonies in danger. The enemy had not yet reached their worlds. And still, the messages went out. In the hidden chambers of the surviving councils, debates raged. The Drath general stood tall, his voice rough with anger. They will not come. Humans think only of themselves. We waste time. Every second we delay, another world dies. The Sherry scientist shook her head. You do not understand them. Humans are not like us. They do not fight only for survival. They fight for something else, something we do not have. The Vexor commander snarled. You speak as if they are saviors. But do not forget, humans are dangerous. They are reckless. If they come, they will not follow our commands. They will not obey our rules. We invite chaos into an already burning galaxy. The chamber filled with silence. All of them knew the truth. Humans were feared as much as they were admired. Long ago, in smaller wars, humans had been mercenaries. They fought for allies, sometimes for coin, sometimes for honor, and sometimes for reasons no one could understand. They fought in ways alien generals could not predict. They sacrificed when others would retreat. They risked everything when others would surrender. Some called them heroes. Others called them monsters. And now, when the galaxy was dying, the only question was this: which would they be if they came again? Across the stars, the signals finally reached the human colonies. On a quiet blue world, far from the burning front lines, human leaders gathered in a dark war room. Maps of the galaxy flickered on holoscreens. Red lines showed the enemy spreading like fire. Blue lights, marks of the great alien empires, were fading one by one. At the center of the room, an old human admiral stood in silence. His face was weathered, his eyes cold. He had seen wars before. He had seen defeat. But never like this. They beg for us, one officer said softly. The messages are everywhere. The aliens ask us to fight. Another officer clenched his fist. Why should we? This is not our war. The enemy has not touched our home. We owe them nothing. The admiral did not answer at first. He stared at the map, watching entire civilizations blink out like dying stars. Finally, he spoke. If the galaxy falls, we fall with it. The enemy will not stop at the alien empires. Sooner or later, they will come for us too. The room went quiet. The truth was clear. But not everyone agreed. Across human worlds, voices rose in protest. Some said, do not send our sons and daughters to die in alien wars. Others said, we should protect only Earth, only our colonies. And yet, there were also voices of fire. Veterans remembered the alien wars where humans had fought side by side with others. They remembered promises made long ago, that if the galaxy ever needed them again, they would answer. Young soldiers volunteered before orders were even given. They sharpened their blades, checked their rifles, and waited. To them, this was not just another war. This was a chance to prove that humanity was more than a small, young race. Back in the Alien Council, news arrived. The humans had heard. The Drath general leaned forward. Well? Do they come? The messenger's voice trembled. The humans are preparing fleets. They are not sending a token force. They are sending everything. Shock filled the chamber. Everything, the Vexor commander whispered. But, why? The Sherry scientist closed her eyes, almost smiling for the first time in years. Because they are human. They do not fight halfway. If they come with fire. The galaxy stirred with rumors. Refugees whispered of fleets rising from human space, engines burning bright in the void. Soldiers, broken and weary, spoke of allies who would fight without fear. Children dreamed of strange warriors who would stand against the endless dark. The enemy, too, heard the whispers. Deep within their swarm, in the cold heart of the machine hives, signals were intercepted. For the first time, they hesitated. Not in fear, but in calculation. They remembered the humans. They remembered battles that should have been impossible, yet were won. They remembered enemies who would rather die than kneel. And so, the enemy prepared as well. The galaxy was no longer silent. Something was moving. Something was coming. The broken armies still lay in ruins, but for the first time in decades there was a chance, a small, fragile chance, that the war was not over. The humans had answered the call. Now the galaxy would discover what that meant. The stars trembled as the first human fleet arrived. It was not a small force. Hundreds of ships emerged from the dark, their engines burning bright, their hulls scarred with the marks of old wars. They came in silence, a wall of steel and fire, each vessel carrying soldiers who had chosen to leave their home behind. For the alien defenders, broken and tired, it was like seeing thunder in the night sky. "They came," whispered a Drath officer as the ships filled the horizon. His voice shook with disbelief. The humans truly came. The fleets gathered above a ruined world, once home to billions, now nothing but ash. The swarm was there, feeding on what remained, their ships drifting like dark shadows. The alien commanders expected hesitation. They thought the humans would wait, study, or plan. But humans did not wait. The order was given, and the human fleet moved. The battle began like a storm. Human ships charged forward, weapons blazing. Missiles streaked through the void, striking swarm vessels in violent bursts of fire. Cannons roared, tearing holes into enemy lines. Where alien fleets often fought with caution and distance, humans closed the gap, fighting face to face. Alien soldiers watching from nearby stations gasped in shock. "They are insane," one whispered. "They fly into the heart of the enemy." But insanity was not the right word. It was something else, fearlessness. Humans fought as if death was only another weapon in their hands. The swarm answered with fury. Their ships swarmed like insects, thousands against hundreds, surrounding the humans in an endless tide. Any other fleet would have broken. Any other commanders would have retreated. But not the humans. They fought back to back, ship beside ship, turning their fleet into a fortress of fire. When the enemy pressed too close, humans rammed them. When weapons ran low, they launched desperate maneuvers, cutting into the swarm like knives. The aliens watching from afar felt something they had not known in years. Hope. On the ground below, human soldiers landed in dropships. They stepped onto the ash-covered world with rifles in hand, their eyes hard and unshaken. They moved quickly, clearing ruins, hunting down swarm creatures still feeding among the rubble. The Drath survivors hiding in the ruins watched in silence. These were not the towering warriors of legend, nor the shining heroes of ancient stories. These were men and women, scarred, tired, carrying heavy packs and heavier weapons. But when they fought like fire itself. A swarm beast leapt from the shadows, its claws dripping with poison. A human soldier met it head-on, emptying his weapon until smoke rose from the barrel. Another beast crashed through the walls, but the humans did not run. They formed a line, stood together, and fired until the monster fell. For the first time, the survivors saw enemies die, and stay dead. Above the planet, the battle reached its peak. Human ships had been torn apart, but so had the swarm. The endless tide was breaking, pulled apart by relentless attacks. The human admiral stood on his bridge, his voice calm, his orders sharp. He did not speak of retreat. He did not speak of survival. He spoke only of victory. "Push forward," he commanded. "Drive them back. Make them remember us." And the humans obeyed. Hours later, the impossible happened. The swarm retreated. The galaxy had seen the enemy advance without pause for decades. They had seen planets burn, fleets vanish, empires fall. Never once had the enemy stepped back. Until now. Alien soldiers watching from distant stations shouted in disbelief. Refugees wept in joy. Commanders stared at their screens, unable to speak. The impossible had happened because humans had arrived. But the victory was not clean. Human ships floated in ruins, their dead counted in the thousands. Soldiers bled on the ground below, holding broken weapons in their hands. Yet their faces were not filled with despair. They were filled with fire. They had lost much, but they had won more. They had shown the galaxy what could be done. The message spread like lightning. The humans fought the swarm, and the swarm ran. In the alien council, the news arrived. The Sherry scientist let out a breath she had been holding for years. The Drath general closed his eyes, whispering a prayer. The Vexor commander, once filled with doubt, whispered only one word. Impossible. But it was not impossible. It was human. The enemy, deep in their dark hives, felt the sting of defeat. They had met countless species before. They had destroyed countless armies. But the humans were different. The humans were dangerous. And so, the swarm made a choice. If humans had entered the war, then the next battle would not be like the last. They would strike harder, stronger, with everything they had. The galaxy did not know it yet, but the true war was only beginning. The galaxy had seen something it thought impossible. The swarm had been pushed back. But victory was only the beginning. The humans did not stop. They did not rest. Instead, they began to plan something greater. In a war room deep inside a captured station, alien commanders gathered around human officers. Maps of burning sectors lit the screens. For decades, the swarm had advanced without pause. Now, for the first time, there was a chance to strike back. The Drath general growled, his voice heavy with doubt. We can win small battles. But to face the full swarm? That is suicide. The Sherry scientist leaned forward. Then perhaps we must think like the humans. They do not fear suicide. They turn it into strategy. The Vexor commander shook his head. No alien fleet can move as they do. No soldier can fight as they do. If we follow them, we will be destroyed. The human admiral stood silently until the voices faded. Then he spoke. Then don't follow us. Fight with us. The plan was bold, reckless, and unlike anything the aliens had ever imagined. Instead of defending worlds, instead of retreating, the humans proposed an attack. A strike not at the enemy's edge, but deep into their heart. The aliens stared in disbelief. You want to attack into the swarm? The Drath general asked. Yes, the admiral said simply. We take the fight to them. We strike where they do not expect it. We bleed them until they remember fear. For a long moment, silence hung over the chamber. Then, slowly, one by one, the alien commanders nodded. They had seen the humans fight. They had seen the impossible. Perhaps, just perhaps, this mad plan could work. The fleets prepared. Humans and aliens together. It was an alliance built on desperation, but also on respect. Alien soldiers trained beside human troops. At first, they struggled to understand each other. The Drath could not believe humans laughed even before battle. The Sherry were unsettled by the humans' reckless courage. The Vexor shook their heads at the humans' strange habit of singing in war camps. But slowly, something changed. The aliens saw that laughter was not madness, it was defiance. That recklessness was not stupidity, it was bravery. And that singing was not weakness, it was strength. For the first time, broken armies stood tall again. Not because they had found hope within themselves, but because the humans had shared theirs. The assault began. The Allied fleets launched into the dark, following the humans straight into enemy territory. The swarm was waiting, vast and endless. The first clash shook the stars. Alien fleets moved cautiously, as they always had. But beside them, human ships charged with fire, carving paths through the enemy. Their courage was infectious. Alien captains, inspired by human defiance, pushed forward harder than they ever had before. Together, they struck like a blade into the swarm's heart. On the ground, battles raged across ruined worlds. Human squads led alien soldiers into ambushes, traps, and fearless charges. The Drath learned how to fight without retreat. The Sherry learned to hold the line no matter the cost. Even the mighty Vexor, once cautious, roared into battle with newfound fury. The swarm, for the first time in history, began to fall back, not just from humans, but from an alliance transformed. Yet victory came with a price. Worlds were soaked in blood. Fleets burned in the void. Humans fought like they had nothing to lose, and many never returned. But their sacrifice changed the war. Whispers spread across the galaxy. The humans are turning the tide. The swarm can bleed. Perhaps we can win. But the swarm was not finished. In their dark hives, they calculated. They had underestimated the humans once. They would not do so again. They began to gather strength, pulling vast numbers of ships, creatures, and machines into one place. A single massive strike. A storm so powerful it would shatter the Alliance in one blow. The human admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring into the void. Reports came from scouts, warnings of an enemy fleet beyond imagination. His officers looked to him for answers. The aliens turned to him for guidance. Even the strongest warriors felt the weight of fear return. The admiral's voice was calm. This war is not decided yet. They will come. And when they come, we will meet them. But in his eyes burned something darker, a fire that whispered of sacrifice. Because he knew what the others did not, the coming battle would decide everything. Victory, or extinction. The storm came without warning. Scouts had spoken of a great enemy fleet, but no one imagined the truth. The swarm had gathered everything, ships beyond counting, beasts bred only for war, machines built to destroy. It was not an army. It was a wave meant to drown the stars. The humans and their allies had struck hard in recent battles. They had cut deep into enemy territory, bringing hope back to the galaxy. But hope would soon be tested. The battle began at the edge of a dying star system. The Allied fleets were waiting, human ships in the center, alien forces spread across the flanks. They had prepared traps, ambushes, and defenses. But when the enemy arrived, the void itself seemed to shatter. Tens of thousands of swarm vessels poured into the system. Their shadows swallowed the light of the star. The ground shook on nearby planets as their hives descended like falling mountains. Even the bravest soldiers froze at the sight. The human admiral gave the order. Hold the line. The fleets fired. Cannons roared, missiles streaked, energy beams tore through the void. At first, the traps worked. Enemy vessels burned. Entire waves of swarm beasts were shattered before they reached the fleets. But the tide did not stop. For every ship destroyed, 10 more arrived. For every beast slain, 100 replaced it. Slowly, the line began to break. On the ground, it was worse. Human and alien soldiers fought shoulder to shoulder in ruined cities. Streets turned into rivers of fire and ash. The swarm poured through walls, over rooftops, under the ground. A Drath warrior fought beside a human sergeant, their backs pressed together as enemies closed in from every side. "We are surrounded," the Drath roared. The human only grinned, blood running down his face. "Good. Then we can't miss." They fought until their weapons broke, then fought with blades, fists, and claws. Around them, the city crumbled. Above, the fleets suffered. Human ships were torn apart one by one. Alien vessels scattered, struggling to regroup. Communications filled with desperate voices. "We are losing. They are too many. Retreat before it's too late." But the humans did not retreat. They held on, even as their ships burned. The admiral's voice rang across the channels. "There is no retreat. If we run, the galaxy dies. Hold the line." Hours turned into days. The battle raged without pause. Both sides bled, but the swarm's numbers seemed endless. The alliance was breaking. At last, the enemy unleashed their final strike. From the darkness emerged a ship so massive it dwarfed every fleet around it. A living hive the size of a moon, pulsing with fire, its weapons capable of tearing planets apart. The Allied soldiers looked up and felt despair. If that ship reached the heart of the fleet, everything would be lost. The humans prepared their last gamble. The admiral stood silent for a moment, staring at the impossible. He knew the cost. He knew what had to be done. He turned to his officers. "Ready the plan." They hesitated. "Admiral, if we do this, there is no return." His eyes were cold, but his voice was steady. "There was never a return. Do it." As the massive hive ship advanced, human vessels broke formation. They drove straight into the enemy line, drawing fire, sacrificing themselves to open a path. Entire squadrons burned in seconds, but still they pushed forward. Alien commanders shouted in shock. "What are they doing? They are throwing away their fleet." But slowly, they understood. The humans were not fleeing. They were aiming for the heart. On the ground, soldiers saw human ships streak overhead, diving into the swarm like falling stars. They cheered through blood and tears. "They are not retreating," whispered a Sherry medic. They are attacking. And in that moment, even as the world burned around them, hope flickered again. The humans had one last trick. They carried a weapon built in secret, one so dangerous even they had sworn never to use it unless the galaxy itself was at stake. A weapon not of defense, but of pure destruction. As their fleet reached the massive hive ship, the order was given. Activate it. The stars seemed to tremble. But what would happen next was unknown. The humans had gambled everything, their fleet, their lives, perhaps even their species, on this single desperate move. If it worked, the enemy would finally break. If it failed, the galaxy would fall into endless night. The galaxy held its breath. Human ships burned as they plunged through the endless tide. The massive hive ship loomed ahead, a living mountain of steel and flesh, its weapons tearing the void apart. Entire fleets had fallen before such monsters. But now, for the first time, one was under attack. The humans carried their secret weapon. A weapon meant not to wound, but to end. The plan was simple, and impossible. A handful of human vessels, their shields shattered, their hulls broken, drove straight toward the hive ship's core. They were already dying, but they did not turn away. On the bridge of his flagship, the admiral stood tall. His voice was calm, even as alarms screamed around him. "This is humanity's burden," he said. "And humanity's gift. Remember this day." His officers saluted. Not one hesitated. The weapon was armed. It was no ordinary bomb. It was a storm forged from stolen science, a device that could rip apart matter itself. To use it meant sacrificing the ships that carried it. To use it meant never returning. The humans knew this. Still, they pushed forward. Enemy fire tore through their ranks. Ships shattered. Thousands died. But the path remained open, cleared by human sacrifice. Finally, the flagship broke through the last line of defense. The hive ship loomed before them, its surface crawling with weapons and living machines. The admiral gave the final order. Detonate. Light swallowed the void. The explosion was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It did not burn, it unmade. The hive ship's armor twisted, cracked, and vanished into nothing. Its weapons fell silent. Its vast body split apart, screaming as its core imploded. The shockwave ripped through the swarm fleet. Thousands of their ships were torn apart. The endless tide that had seemed invincible broke apart in chaos and confusion. The impossible had happened. The swarm was shattered. On the ground, soldiers looked to the sky and saw a second sun blazing in the heavens. They fell silent, their weapons dropping, as the hive ship collapsed into fragments. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the cheers began. Humans and aliens alike raised their voices in joy and disbelief. They had seen the unstoppable enemy retreat. They had seen the monsters bleed. And they had seen humanity do the unthinkable. For the first time in decades, the galaxy was free of fear. But the price was terrible. The human fleet was gone. The admiral and thousands of his soldiers had given their lives in the strike. The void was filled with wreckage, silent graves drifting among the stars. Alien commanders wept for allies they had once feared. Survivors whispered the names of human ships that had burned for them. And everywhere, the same word spread. The humans saved us. In the following days, the swarm retreated across the front. Their great weapon was gone. Their endless advance was broken. The Alliance pressed forward, reclaiming world after world. The Drath raised banners in their ruined cities. The Sherry rebuilt their shattered stations. The Vexer, once proud and cautious, bowed their heads in respect. And in every corner of the galaxy, the story was told. The story of the hopeless war. The story of broken armies. The story of how, when all seemed lost, the humans were called. But among the survivors, there was also silence. They remembered the cost. They remembered the faces of human soldiers who never returned. They remembered the Admiral's final words, "Remember this day." The galaxy did not forget. Generations later, children would ask their parents, "Who saved us?" And the answer was always the same. The humans. The ones who fought when no one else could. The ones who stood when all others fell. The ones who gave everything, so that we might live. The war was not truly over. The swarm still lingered in dark corners of the stars. But the tide had turned forever. The galaxy now had hope. And it had humans. For the first time in history, the aliens no longer saw humanity as reckless mercenaries or dangerous outsiders. They saw them for what they truly were. The warriors of last resort. The shield of the weak. The fire in the darkness. And so the galaxy whispered a new truth. If ever again the stars burned, if ever again the endless dark returned, one call would rise above all others. Call the humans. Because when hope is gone, when armies are broken, when the war is lost, that is when humanity fights.